Hey everyone, thank you for stopping by my channel once again. Today I have the part 2 of the two stamp sets 7 cards, and this one is going to be geared more towards the brunch cards. So right off the rip here, I'm going to start off with card number 5. I'm going to be using the utensil stamp along with the champagne glass, and I'm going to stamp them onto this card base with Ranger embossing clear ink, and I'm going to do that all on the front part of this card. Once I stamp that, I'm going to be using my Gina K Designs gold embossing powder, and then I'm going to be using my embossing heat tool to make sure that everything is set. And then I went ahead and cut a watercolor paper panel, like a small square, enough for the background to show through on the card. And I'm using Distress Ink Fossilized Amber along with these two stencils, a larger circle stencil and a smaller circle stencil. And what I plan to do is grab my blending tool and grab that fossilized amber and blend some of these circles onto that watercolor square paper. So I want to give the effect or the illusion of the champagne bubbles or like a mimosa bubbles, just kind of the illusion that it is some type of bubble effect. So I use a smaller stencil here, and I realized that it kind of just looks like I used a stencil because the smaller circles were in a line. So I go back in with the larger circle stencil, and I just start using random places to blend the ink on and kind of get rid of the smaller ones so you can't tell that I had done the smaller circles in a row. So then next I grab Distress ink in, I think it's Rusty Hinge, and I just use that on the outer sides going inward. So I make sure to ink up the sides or the edges of the paper because I don't like it when you can see the white from the paper. So I just go ahead and blend the edges like I'm doing to the card here. And I'm taking that same Distress ink Rusty Hinge and just doing this to the outer edges of the card as well. And I think it just gives a like finished look, and I like how it frames the background. Next, I take the same Distress ink in Fossilized Amber, and I just smear a little bit of that ink onto an acrylic block with water and use my paintbrush to color in the champagne glass as it as if it has mimosa in there, kind of like an orangey color. Next, I grab that same paintbrush and grab some water and add some splashes to this background. And then I decided I wanted to do something else, a little to add a little bit of interest, and so I just decided to wrinkle it, and then I realized that that wasn't enough. I wanted to do something more, and so I start ripping the edges of the paper to kind of look like it was ripped, kind of like giving it the effect as if though it was a napkin. Why? I don't know. I just thought it would be interesting. Um, and so I grab my tape adhesive and tape that down to the card base. Next, I grab the stamp that has the sentiment, it's brunch o'clock, and I stamp that with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink in the middle. And I didn't realize this as I was doing the card that there was two small black dots at the top. But the way I get rid of it is I use my gel pen to go over them and then rub some of the distress ink of the same color on top of it. And it pretty much makes it disappear. Then I grab my gel pen and go around some of these circles, not all of them, just some of them, and outline the circle and add a highlight to kind of make these circles pop and give the bubble effect. And that's pretty much it for this card. It was fun and simple, and it's ready to go for whenever I am ready to invite somebody for brunch. Here's some pictures of the finished card. Card number 7. I went ahead and used the same card base, and it's a standard card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I used this pattern paper that looks like a table pattern type of what do you call those things that you go over, covers, table covers. And then I run a little bit of tape on one side of the edge to mask the fact that I didn't cut it straight. And it's like a turquoise color that I lay down with some tape on the edge. And next I grabbed my Tim Holtz stamping platform, and I have placed some watercolor paper on there, and then grab just the little foodie stamps. So the pancakes, the donut, the champagne, the croissant, and the bacon. And I stamp everything with VersaFine Onyx Black stamp ink. And the bacon I did with archival ink in color vermilion. And here I'm just grabbing Dusty Hinge and going into the pancakes with that color and the croissant. And then I grab some of Gathered Twigs Distress ink and do the same thing. So trying to add a little bit of shading into these food bread colors. And I grab Festive Berries for the donut and Fossilized Amber again for the champagne. And also on top of the pancakes for the melted butter, I use the same color Fossilized Amber. Now I was so excited to use the Tim Holtz stamping platform because this is the new thing I bought for my stash, so to speak. As I've mentioned in previous videos, that I don't have a whole lot of proper tools to make cards because I've only ever done like paintings and art journaling and stuff like that. So I'm very new to card making, and I just ran with it. I became obsessed and wanted everything, but of course everything costs. So I was able to go to Hobby Lobby one day, and I saw that Tim Holtz stuff was at 30%. So they had the stamping platform. I saw it, and I went to the checkout and I asked if I could get the 30% plus the 40% coupon that's online, and they said no, it's either one or the other. So I ended up using the 40%, so I got it for like 23 and change. So I thought that was a steal because online it's like $39.99 plus shipping, so it would have been like 40 something. So I'm glad I was able to purchase it and make stamping a lot easier, especially when you don't stamp well the first time. You don't get a proper image. And I probably should have done that with this sentiment, the Brunch Friends Forever, because I ended up stamping it kind of crooked. And at this point, I was like, I'm going with it because I had already finished painting everything. So I just left it there. And after all, it is a handmade card. So it kind of goes along with, something handmade. That's the joy of making cards. You make it look handmade. So anyways, I grabbed that and I cut it down to a little rectangle and add some foam adhesive to the back and stick that to the center of my card. And I really liked the finish. At first I didn't like it as much, but then I started looking at it and I said, well, let me just add a little bit of shading onto the edges. So I did use Gathered Twigs Distress ink, and then I used Glossy Accents, which is another thing I purchased on that same day I went to Hobby Lobby. So I was excited to use these little things. input them to use on my cards. So I use glossy accents on the melted butter and on the donut, and I was only going to use it on those two images. Then I was like, well, it's not going to look, balanced. So I ended up pretty much on putting it on all the images. So they all like have this glossy shine to it. But I liked the end result. I thought it looked nice at the end. And I was just very excited to use my new stuff. So this is the finished card, which I really enjoyed. I think the colors really pop, and it really does seem like a table cover in the background. So I thought that was really nice. So last card, card number 7. This one, as y'all know, if you've watched my videos, my card making videos, I do not have a die cutting machine. So I have to cut all these like shapes and stuff if I want to do anything like a pop-up window card or something. So I end up doing 3 circles because this is going to be the front, and I cut them out with my scissors. And of course it wasn't a perfect circle, but what I do is I grab my blending tool with gathered twigs and kind of try to ink up the edges of that circle. Then I use the utensil stamp and ink that up with the Ranger clear embossing ink and use the Gina K white embossing powder. And the back of the circles is watercolor paper on that white panel you see there. And I used fossilized amber and blended in those circles. And to mute the yellow, I used gathered twigs on top of it. And that's going to be what peeks through the circles. So the best way for me to achieve this was to add a bunch of foam tape to the brown front card part, and then add the back watercolor part that's going to be in the background. And then I stick all of that onto the card itself, to the card base. Then I grabbed the images I had already previously colored. These were the last images that I had left over. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to arrange them. Once I find the perfect arrangement, I go ahead and add some foam tape and add those to the circles. Now the embossing was not my best. It was pretty hard, but at this point I was already too far in and decided that it was just gonna look like flour had smeared, like just like the effect of flour when you bake pancakes. So I was alright with it. And I felt it needed a little bit more interest, so I used my scalloped scissors and cut out more than half a circle, and then a stamp brunch is always a good idea, and ink up the edges with archival ink in color vermilion and ink up the edges going inward. And I thought I needed one more piece to add some more interest, so I did the same thing towards the bottom but a smaller circle and did stamp brunch Forever Friends, and then I went in with glossy accents and added that to the melted butter areas and the bacon. And I at the end, even though I had that mishap with the whole embossing, I thought this was such a great card, and you can totally recreate this card, of course, if you have all the proper tools and the like anti-static powder and all that good stuff. You can totally achieve this look way better than I did, but it's just an idea for inspiration. In the end, I really did enjoy it, and I really do plan to use this card in the future to invite someone out for brunch. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give this video a thumbs up, and if you are not subscribed, you can go ahead and subscribe by clicking on my picture. I had so much fun making this card. I hope you got inspired, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.